Today, as the government side declared the government regret the implementation of military-style disciplinary practices, also known as Pembarakan, for problematic students in West Java. This practice includes harsh physical training, military-like commands, punishments such as push-ups, running under the sun, and a restriction that are both physically and mentally demanding as if these children were soldiers in a boot camp. We reject this approach not because we oppose discipline, but because we reject a repressive, dysfunctional, and outdated method in modern education. First, we assert that the root cause of problematic student behavior, such as truancy, smoking, or involvement in violence, will never be resolved merely by physically shaping them or intimidating them through military-like tactics. The real root of the problem lies in the system's failure to comprehend the complex social, economic, and psychological context of students. In many cases, these students come from families under heavy financial pressure, lack emotional support, or have experienced early trauma. In this context, Pembarakan only worsened their existing psychological wounds instead of providing any meaningful solution. Second, this approach is pedagogically ineffective. Education should be a safe space that fosters autonomy, empathy, and personal responsibility. But by introducing a militaristic hierarchical relationship into schools, students are not learning because they want to improve, but because they are afraid. This fosters a culture of fear rather than one of learning. A study by the Psychology Institute of Universitas Indonesia 2022 showed that students subjected to physical and verbal punishment tend to suffer from lowered self-esteem, social alienation, and even show tendencies to resist authority passively or aggressively. Third, data indicates that Pembarakan brings no long-term positive impact. According to a 2023 report from the Indonesian Child Protection Commission, cases of violence in schools increased by 23% compared to the previous year, and many of these involve physical punishment methods as character building. In areas like Karawang and Tasikmalaya, students were sent to boot camps to be reset, when in reality they were not morally broken children. They were children who lacked guidance and support. We see this as a form of institutionalized violence when educational institutions permit or even promote harsh disciplinary methods. They are essentially teaching that violence is a valid tool to correcting behavior. This is dangerous. Students who are trained through violence are more likely to perpetrate violence in their future. Social relationships, either as perpetrators or as victims. They learn that authority is built through domination, not trust. Fourth, Pembarakan violates national laws and child protection principle. Article 54 of Law Number 35 of 2014 of Child Protection explicitly states that every child has the right to be protected from any form of violence. Ministry of Education Regulation Number 82 of 2015 also emphasized the prevention and resolution of violence within educational settings. By allowing Pembarakan to persist, schools are not only failing their educational mission but also violating legal standards. Some argue that Pembarakan has succeeded in making students more disciplined. But we ask, What kind of discipline is built on fear? Proper discipline is born from awareness, not from threats. If we raise students to obey only when watching, we'll create individuals who lose their moral compass when supervision disappears. Worse, students who can handle the pressure may fall into chronic stress, depression, or even choosing to drop out of school altogether. As a solution, we do not merely reject Pembarakan. We offer a more human and evidence-based alternative. We encourage schools to implement restorative justice, an approach that rebuilds relationships among students, teachers, and the school community through dialogues and reflection, rather than relying on physical punishment. We also advocate for intensive teacher training in classroom management, adolescent psychology, and non-violent disciplinary approaches. Additionally, we propose the establishment of psychological support units within school under the supervision of local education offices to address students with behavioral challenges. For more complex cases, schools should collaborate with social services, health departments, and youth rehabilitation organizations. This multidisciplinary approach is more aligned with 21st century education principle, child center, understanding past, and long-term oriented. In conclusion, we emphasize that Pembarakan is not merely method. It is a symbol of systems failure to understand who these children truly are. Human beings who are growing. These are not machines that can be fixed with punishment and pressure. If education aims to shape whole human beings, then violence in any form has no place in the classroom. Therefore, we firmly declare that this House must regret the implementation of Pembarakan for problematic students in West Java. Thank you. Today, as the opposition reject this motion, opposition do not regret the implementation of military-style disciplinary measures Pembarakan for problematic students in West Java. On the contrary, we believe that in the current social and educational context of Indonesia, especially in regions facing a high rate of student delinquency, Pembarakan is a targeted, structured, and necessary intervention. We will demonstrate that when conducted responsibly and under strict regulation, this approach is not only legally acceptable, but also urgently needed in practice to address the disciplinary crisis in schools. Let us agree on a definition. Pembarakan in this context is not brutal violence or a violation of human rights. It is a structured disciplinary method inspired by military style training designed to instill discipline, responsibility, and self-control. It includes orderly routines, physical activities, cooperation, and mental development exercise. Not all forms of Pembarakan involve violence, and not all are punitive in nature. In many cases, they are part of character building intervention for students who have repeatedly violated school rules. Why is this approach necessary? Because we are facing a behavioral crisis in schools. According to the West Java Education Office in 2022, more than 11,000 students were involved in cases of juvenile delinquency, including fights, bullying, smoking, drug abuse, and other serious violations. In this context, conventional methods such as regular counseling warnings or suspensions are often ineffective and can be ignored by students. Many display resistance to authority and do not respond to passive psychological approach. This is where Pembarakan serves as a firm but educational intervention. We also reject the assumptions that Pembarakan equals institutionalized violence. Several regions have developed character-based Pembarakan programs in collaboration with the military, psychologists, and educators. For example, in Karawang Regency, the Barak Character program launched in 2022 in partnership with Kodim 0604 and the Education Office successfully reduced serious violation in school by 38% in one semester. Students were not mistreated, but were encouraged to build awareness through discipline, teamwork, and motivational training. Legally, there is no national regulation that explicitly prohibits pembarakan, as long as it does not involve physical abuse or verbal harassment. Law number 20 of 2003 on the national education system states that education must develop students' potential to become individuals who are faithful, noble, healthy, knowledgeable, skilled, and responsible. This means firm discipline has a legal space as long as it stays within educational boundaries. Moreover, Ministry of Education Regulation number 82 of 2015 prohibits violence, but not structured, not abuse disciplinary measures. We would also like to highlight the misframing from the government side. The government side which equates Pembarakan with abuse of systemic violence. In reality, Pembarakan is not carried out and miss, but selectively and based on behavioral assessments. In many cases, parents consciously approve of their children's participation because previous methods have proven ineffective. This reflects a praising social need to alternative disciplinary procedures that are more concrete and have an immediate impact on students' attitude. As the closing opposition, we would like to expand this debate into a broader social dimension. Pembarakan is not just about disciplining individuals. It is also about restoring the moral authority of schools and teachers amid the weakening of social control over youth. If students are becoming increasingly deviant, disrespectful, and indifferent to values and rules, then the education system is losing its foundation. Pembarakan, when implemented with transparency, proper oversight, and professional supervision, serve as a transitional tool toward restoring order and healthy learning environments. We are not blind to the potential for measures. Therefore, the solution we offer is not to abolish Pembarakan, but to reform its implementation. First, schools must collaborate with psychologists and train military personnel with educational backgrounds, not purely military ones. Second, Pembarakan must be based on a soft-skill curriculum, leadership, teamwork, discipline, and conflict resolution. Third, every program must be regularly evaluated and reported to the Education Office. In this way, the approach will not only be safe, but also pedagogically and social measurable. In conclusion, we want to remind everyone that not all students can be guided with hugs and gentle words. In some cases, stronger intervention are necessary to reach their moral awareness. Pembarakan is not a standalone solution, but it can be part of a broader ecosystem of educational solutions. To completely reject Pembarakan is to shut down one of the few doors to real change for students who have lost direction. Therefore, we firmly reject this motion and do not regret the implementation of Pembarakan in appropriate, controlled, and socially responsive context in West Java. Thank you.